It looks like we're online. Thank you for your patience, everyone, both everyone that's here in person and those who are online. We had some technical difficulties, but we're ready to go. Thank you for joining us tonight at the March 6th meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. If you could please take the roll call, Vice Chair Kinayoub.
Chair Pintar.
Present.
I'm present. Member Brown.
Present.
Member Fasano.
Present.
Member Federico Mondragon is not present. Member Mendelson.
Present.
Member Ware.
Here.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any board members that are joining us online tonight, so we don't need any statements of cause. Now we may go to public comment, item number 3. Ms. Hawcock, if you want to call the first speaker, please.
Thank you, Chair Pintar. We will start with the in-person. First, we will call Tom Packard.
I'm Tom Packard. I'm a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice, North County. It looks like there's been no progress in getting the sheriff to do her duty and share needed and required data regarding SB 519, the Mountain Whisper Light Study, and the CIRB reviews. Please insist that the sheriff provide all the needed data and ask her what she is afraid will happen if she releases these data. If her office is performing legally and professionally, she should have no fear about sharing data. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Next, we will call Lauren Milano.
Hi, my name is Lauren Milano. I'm an attorney at McKenzie Scott, and I'm one of the attorneys that represents the estate of Aaron Bonin, as well as Aaron Bonin's mother, Barb. I'm here in that capacity, but I'm also here in my capacity as a member of the public who is personally concerned about the quality of the investigation that was done into Mr. Bonin's death and the rationale behind the recommended findings that the action was justified in Aaron Bonin's case. The findings failed to address several important pieces of information and evidence. First, there's no mention of multiple witness accounts in the rationale. After Aaron fell unconscious and was taken to the hospital where he later died, the Sheriff's Department investigation revealed that many of the other detainees in that module reported that Aaron had called out for help, that some of them had tried to call out for help as well for Aaron, that he reported that he needed help urgently, that he needed to go to the hospital. They were pressing their intercom buttons to try to get deputies' attention. At least 3 detainees specifically reported that they hit their call buttons, but no sworn staff appeared or responded in response to those call buttons. Many say that Aaron was calling out for help for a number of hours prior to his falling unconscious and his later death. CLERB's reasoning also fails to mention that when investigators inspected his cell after he was transferred to the hospital, that the intercom was not working and that it hadn't been working on 9/14/2022 as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we will call Michelle Anglis.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Angeles. I also work for McKenzie Scott and also represent the Bonin family. And I'm here to address also the Bonin case. And I want to add to my colleagues' comments. I want to start by saying thank you to the CLERB for their work and for their volunteer service. I know that you guys are volunteers, but I do want to express that I'm deeply disappointed by the findings in this case. And I expected quite a little bit more coming from this group. And I know that the work that you guys do is quite important. Some of the missing information that we know is it's important that the missing information that we know is that the deputies were coming around in rounds, and there was many witnesses who were hearing Aaron Bonin cry for help, and these deputies ignored him. They were doing their rounds and just kept walking by. We're asking today that you guys look in more detail at the evidence, take a second look at all of the recordings, take a listen to these witnesses. Even though they are detainees, they were giving really specific details about the cries for help. They were asking to be heard about the various violations that they have witnesses, not just in Aaron Bonin's case, but the violations that they see every day. So prior to finalizing any violations, we ask you to really consider this information and the relevant policies and procedures that deputies have appeared to violate. For example, the deputies did not summon medical care and acted as a barrier to Aaron's medical care. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Next, we will call Devra Samuel.
Hello, my name is Deborah Sume, representing Raymond Vogelman. I'm here to remind the public and the county that this is not just about what happens to criminals. This is about what happens to our own loved ones when they fall in hard times. My brother struggled with mental illness. He had been admitted to psychiatric hospitals before, but each time he was released just after 72 hours. I worried about him being on the streets. So when he was jailed, I mistakenly believed he would be safe, that he would have food, shelter, and be monitored. I thought the legal system would evaluate him and help him get the care he needed. I never imagined I should fear for his life. My brother, Raymond, was not safe. He was abused, living in fear every day, and when he was bleeding, handcuffed, and suffering, the jail stood by and did nothing. They let my brother die. Nobody deserves to bleed to death while those in power stand by. The San Diego County jail system failed him, and we demand answers. We call on CLERB to investigate why vulnerable people are placed in dangerous cells without proper monitoring. We demand to know why Raymond was put there in the first place. And we demand to know why, when he was clearly in distress, officers chose to handcuff him instead of calling 911. Raymond Vogelman deserved human dignity. He deserved care. He deserved life. And we will not stop fighting until justice is served. We ask CLERB to do a thorough investigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Wendy.
Hello, my name is Wendy Herkt, and I'm here to represent Raymond Vogelman. Ray and I were in a long-term relationship that lasted over a decade. Tragically, his life was taken in a brutal murder on October 5th, 2022. Raymond was a kind, compassionate, and creative soul. His music and lyrics touched people around the world. He was loved by all who knew him. He wasn't a criminal, nor was he violent. He was a man suffering from bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Despite these challenges, he was a devoted son, brother, uncle, and soulmate. But his life was lost due to negligence by those who were supposed to protect him, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. Ray stood by me through years of cancer treatment, unwavering in his support. He processed his pain and the injustices he saw by writing songs. But when he was incarcerated, he was misclassified and placed among dangerous criminals, despite being a vulnerable individual. On October 4th, 2022, the night before his death, Ray told me that he was hopeful for release and treatment for his mental illness. He was ready to heal. Ray had no chance. He was an at-risk inmate, and yet no one watched over him. His death after being repeatedly beaten by other inmates is incomprehensible. We, Ray's family, friends, and fans demand answers. How many more vulnerable people must die to systemic failures? Why wasn't Ray reclassified? Why was he left to be harmed by those around him? I urge you to imagine your loved one in Ray's position, left unprotected and dying in front of those who should have intervened. This is a call to action. We demand a further investigation by CLERB into Ray's deaths and answers to why he wasn't given the protection he needed. It has been over 2 years, and we will not rest until we get the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Edward McDonald. Edward?
Our son was incarcerated in February of 2023, and they say he committed suicide.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you just state your name at the beginning since we have a
My
different
name-
name as the speaker?
Okay, that was my husband's Edward. I'm Mary
Thank you.
McDowell.
Thank you.
Okay. According to the findings that they're saying that our son was not suicidal, which is not correct. The police report states, in fact, I told the sheriff on camera he wanted suicide by police. Also, when at the first hearing, another sheriff testified after talking to our son, trying to talk him down, that he was suicidal, very suicidal, and had mental problems. The sheriff himself told me several times he had mental problems, needed help, would get help in jail. He got no help whatsoever. He was in between the inmates that he was afraid of, and then the deputies beat him up after the second month he was in jail, beat him up, gave him 2 black eyes, sent him to the hospital, tasered him 3 times. The last time he was in there 5 months, his attorney was working towards a trial. The last time I saw our son was 2 days before he was hung. They say he should have been on suicide watch. He should never have been in a cell with a 3-man bunk where he could hang himself. According to this report, they say he made no complaints that he was not suicidal. We knew he was, and my daughter even talked to the police several times after he was arrested and told him he was suicidal. He had been within the last couple of years talked of suicide. He should have been on suicide watch. I saw him 2 days before he hung, and he told me he was tired of trying to survive in there. It was,
Ms. Murray?
yeah.
Thank you so much. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Leslie Crawford.
My name is Leslie Crawford. I'm the mother of Raymond Vogelman, and I represent North County Equity and Justice. I waited 2 years and 5 months to see a CLERB report, and he's on the private agenda tonight. And to tell you the truth, I was pretty disappointed. I know there's been a lot of turnover here at CLERB, but I don't know why people have to have legal representation to find out what really happened to our loved ones. And I was looking at and reading what you have in your agenda and visions of, well, your son was in a Shark Tank and then he went out to get medical review. And then he came back and we put him in a different shark tank. And then he went out to get another medical examination. But when he came back, you put him in the first shark tank, and your rationale was that you didn't know the names of any of the sharks. And considering how many individuals at George Bailey have mental health problems or physical problems, why don't you have a dolphin tank? I don't understand that jail is so much more dangerous than a prison. We're mystified about that. And like I say, I just was really disappointed because we need you. There are new laws that give you, I really support the other item on the open agenda tonight because we need more from you. We do. We want to know why. We want to know what's happened. And the sheriff's department doesn't share any of that. You shouldn't have to go into debt and get a lawyer to find out what happened to your child. And there's a reason why they don't want to give that information out, because they're neglect.
Ms. Leslie,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we will call David Settles.
Yes, hello, CLERB. I'm David Settles, brother of Matthew Settles, who passed away at George Bailey in August of 2022. I'm here to support the Vogelman family and Leslie Crawford, the other families. Matthew had schizophrenia, long-time schizophrenia, and I hear, the commonality from what I've been hearing, what I know took place with the Vogelmans, and I learned a lot of new details, which are just very sad and preventable, what happened to their family. And I see the similarities with Matthew, he was in a delusional state and, needing help in a county mental hospital. And 2 days later, he's, attacked in county jail with 57 stitches. He was transferred to George Bailey. It obviously wasn't for his safety. So I just, hearing the same stories over and over. And the other commonality I'm seeing is, hearing here for the Vogelmans, it was unsustained, all the findings, and, just hearing this for, our loved ones, all of our loved ones, all of the community, it seems, well, these are preventable. It's just not getting the adequate safety and treatment for the mentally ill. So, once again, thank you, CLERB, for pushing, and we all need to push for that oversight of medical staff. That, there should be findings coming out of this to correct those problems that these vulnerable population, our community is not encountering this. And so I'm here to support all the families, the Pittman family, who's still trying to figure out what happened to their family as well. So thank you, CLERB.
Thank you. Next, we will call Yusuf Miller.
Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. And I'm here to support the Vogelman family for the result that comes back from CLERB that says actions justified. Actions justified, we know that there were a lot of information left out of this case that needed to be reviewed. And if that case was not reviewed completely, then that means that the system is broken. The system doesn't have the proper information or the tools to make a final determination. We ask that you reevaluate this and come back with a decision based on all the information. A lot of families here have that situation already. I've already heard the Bonin family is talking about the same issue that's going on. This is a tragedy that we're seeing all of these disappointments come out. Now, we're standing in support of the Vogelman family, and also here is the families of Elisa Serna, Matthew settles, Gilbert Gill's daughter is on her way. This other Cerners are online, all looking at and disgusted at what they've seen of all these years that people are finding action justified, action justified, action justified. So with that known, how can we expect trust and confidence from the family of James Pittman sitting right here? Their family, they just lost their family, their loved one, the second in custody death in California. And they're here now. A lot of them flew in from other places, and they're here now to say what's going on San Diego County. Now, how can they have any confidence after hearing family after family after family, with all of our family groups coming together and supporting one another? That seems to be the only support they have when coming to a righteous decision on what happened to their loved one. There's been neglect that we've known that's been going on for years. There's been misclassification of people and their mental health situation, which has been going on for years. We need to do better.
Thank you. Next, we will call Diana Serna.
Hello, my name is Deanna Serna. I'm the little sister of Elisa Serna, who died in Las Colinas November 11, 2019. I feel like the action justified decision is becoming too standard with you guys. It's becoming a big red flag. It makes us wonder if CLERB is just getting lazy and using action justified as a rubber stamp on these in-custody death cases. How do you guys want us to trust you when you don't even look at evidence and you leave out crucial details from the agenda reports? And Kelly Martinez, I know you and your clan of killers love to watch these CLERBs. When are you going to learn how to do your stinking job? Hold all your deputies accountable. If you can't do your job, step down. We're getting tired. And I know your little clan is sitting outside instead of being in here listening to these families, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Matt McDowell.
Good evening. I would like to speak with respect to case 2308 McDowell as well. My name is Matt McDowell. I'm Jonathan's cousin. I read the letter from the review board, and I'd like to request that the review board reconsider reopening this report. It does not seem acceptable to accept the response of "I'm fine" from an individual, which there had been multiple documented observations by law enforcement personnel of suicidal circumstances. This year, 2025, is the Jubilee Year of Hope for Catholics worldwide. As part of this Jubilee, based on Scripture, Pope Francis has called on believers in every part of the world to demand dignified conditions for those in prison and respect for their human rights. So with this proclamation and hope, I respectfully request reconsideration for the board to reopen this report to ensure a conclusion that considers the multiple suicidal circumstances long before the event of July 19, 2023, and their contribution to that event that could have been prevented and could prevent such events from occurring again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Sarah.
Sarah Musamechi. I'm an attorney with Iredale and You, and we represent the families of Raymond Vogelman and Rosalie Bartolacci. I'm here to talk to you today about the findings in Rosalie Bartolacci's case. And my colleague's going to talk about another issue, but the issue I want to focus on is CLERB's findings that focus on the timeliness of the safety checks conducted on May 29th, 2023, the day that Rosalie died. We are concerned because the focus on that specific day's checks fail to address the quality of the safety checks and ask any questions about the deplorable conditions that Rosalie languished in for 7 weeks before she died. Much like Lonnie Rupard, who died in similar conditions just a year prior, the records are clear that Rosalie was abandoned in filthy cells covered in urine, feces, and littered with trash and trays of uneaten food. We ask that CLERB use its powers to look into these abhorrent conditions and ask who was responsible for letting Rosalie deteriorate in such horrendous circumstances. Who was responsible for hygiene and sanitation checks? Were they done? Why did nobody clean Rosalie's cell? And why did none of these safety or hygiene checks raise any alarms for the deputies who could see with their own eyes what the records show? A vulnerable, childlike woman who was unable to advocate for herself and who was dying in her own filth. CLERB has the power to demand answers to these questions, and we implore you that you use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Peter.
Thank you. My name is Peter Biebring. I'm also an attorney with Iredale and Yu, representing the families of Raymond Vogelman and Rosalie Bartolacci. The residents of San Diego have handed this body a heavy responsibility in tasking you with figuring out what is going on in this crisis in San Diego jails. But to get meaningful answers, your investigations have to ask the right questions. And in the case of Rosalie Bartolacci, as with others that you've heard today, the problem with these investigations, they don't ask the right questions. One of those questions in Rosalie's case is, why was she in the jail in the first place? She was 32 years old, functioning at a level of an 8-year-old, but under the love and care of her mother had led a happy, healthy existence for most of her life. But in 2023, when she underwent a psychotic episode and her mother called to seek medical intervention, specifically asking for a PERT team, deputies showed up instead. Rosalie's mother told deputies that although she had been assaulted by Rosalie, she did not want to press charges. She told them about her mental illness, her current episode of active psychosis, and begged them to take her to a psychiatric hospital. But instead, they took her to jail. And on booking, the arresting deputies did not inform jail staff that she was undergoing an active psychotic episode. So they cleared her to place her in general population. She was placed in administrative segregation for 5 days, where, of course, she decompensated. And by the time she was transferred to the PSU 5 days later, she was profoundly ill and died less than 2 months later. So the question that your investigation needs to ask is not just whether there was evidence that she expressed concern, this woman who was functioning at the level of an 8-year-old, whether she expressed concern for her own mental or physical well-being, but why did the department not take her to a psychiatric hospital? Why did they not notify the jail intake of her mental episode? And we ask that you remand the report and ask your investigators to ask these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Chelsea.
Chelsea Rehrman, also an attorney at Iredale and Yu. As my colleague stated, we represent the families of Raymond Vogelman and Rosalie Bartolacci. I'm here today to talk about Mr. Vogelman. As my colleague stated, citizens of San Diego rely on this body as a source of information, and oftentimes you can be the only source. While we commend CLERB for the hard work that you do, it is essential for each investigation to ask the right questions. In Mr. Vogelman's case, nobody has done so. The staff recommendation found the Sheriff's Department acted properly in large part because Vogelman had no restrictions that would have prevented him from being housed in Module 1A at the time of the 10/5/22 incident. The proper question is why? Why were there no restrictions? He was repeatedly attacked, and he was repeatedly placed in enhanced observation housing. Why wasn't he classified as a vulnerable inmate? Why, after his second beating on August 3rd, there was a deputy note indicating that Mr. Vogelman should not be returned to Module 1A, was he then returned and later died in the same module? In addition, why was there a delay in receiving emergency medical attention? Why was he immediately handcuffed after a deputy found him bleeding on his bed? Why, over a period of 12 minutes, did several of the sheriff's department's sworn staff watch him pass out, hit his head on the floor? Why did they watch as he coughed up blood? Why did they watch as he turned gray? And as this very body has said countless times, every minute counts. We ask CLERB not to approve the staff recommendation today, but to ask its staff to conduct a complete and full investigation and answer these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Cesar Javier.
My wife first, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Purita. We need help to abate a home-based business, home, occupation in ceramics manufacturing and kiln operation limited. I'm sorry,
Located.
not limited. Located at 5238 Streamview Drive, District City, San Diego, California, since 1984. The home-based kiln operation has been a potential harm to human and environment as vulnerable residents in very close proximity to the kiln operation, our medical symptoms are sneezing, coughing, eye irritation, sore throat, difficulty breathing, dizziness, unusual headaches, heart palpitation, anxiety, fear, and depression. We were hospitalized related to the toxic fumes from the kiln operation. The poisonous gases and airborne toxic particulates inhaled and or possibly ingested from kiln operation may lead to respiratory problems such as asthma, pneumonia, and lung cancer. On June 13, 2021, when the homeowner of kiln operation converted the furnace kiln from wood fuel to gas and fumes, we were inhaling every worse and more potent. We sought help from the police, and their advice was to build a wall and close our windows. We talked to the kiln owners.
Thank you.
Before you go on, is there a connection to the sheriff's department that is in your remarks today? Because I don't believe that what your problem that you're facing is within the CLERB board's jurisdiction, but we could, if you want to give us your written comments, refer it to the county's Air Resources Control Board. I think that would be the body that would be able to help you best. So if you have what you stated tonight in writing, if you can give it to NARAS, we will make sure that it gets to the right agency that can help you, because I'm sorry that isn't something that is within this board's jurisdiction.
May
And
May I have my 2 minutes, ma'am?
if it is relevant to the sheriff's department, you
Yes.
may, but if it is not relevant to the sheriff's department, we need to move on to our business.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that input. We learned. This is now the focus of our effort. We did our job to stop them. We wrote them a letter peacefully. After continuing, nobody is stopping it. I did my citizen's arrest process in my own way. And you know what? I was restrained for 7 months. It was not violent. I was just following the law. Now, that was the first. After 2 years of continuing protest, I was again ordered for a restraining order. Good that the judge said all denied. But after 2 weeks of deeper investigation, it was reversed, and now I have 3 years restraining order. We want justice, and that is all about law enforcement. It is a physical assault to our respiratory. It's a physical assault, indirectly or directly, ma'am. Please, now, we ask the court to ensure that our in-person notice of service be 100%, because the judge now taking over, Judge Soper, wanted that the motion for reconsideration be served in person. So we look at the sheriff as the succor. We went there and submit and request that it be served accurately, timely, so that the judge will be fulfilled of his intent. That's our concern now, because we rely on the sheriff's accurate performance of duty. Ma'am, please ensure that the sheriff assigned in serving the notice of reconsideration be accurate, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We submitted it March 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Norris, do we have any other public comment, non-agenda public comment speakers tonight?
We do have the online.
Okay, go
Yes.
ahead and proceed.
So first we will call Deidre McLeod. Deidre, can you hear us?
My name is Deirdre McLeod, and I am a constituent of Board Supervisor Joel Anderson, District 2. My pronouns are she, her. In 2023, I watched this board waste opportunities for months to publicly support SB 519. The delaying tactics of several board members worked, and this body never did come out in favor of the bill. Nevertheless, SB 519 passed, and it is the law in California that sheriffs must release their internal Critical Incident Review Board reports. Sheriff Martinez is breaking the law by not complying. Yet this board has still not used its voice to demand that she do so. This is the perfect opportunity to use your power to issue resolutions that you discussed last October. Publicly make the case that we must have complete transparency about how in-custody deaths occur. Without the full picture that CLERB reports provide, we will never stop these deaths from happening. Leaving it to the local press to sue for limited access to these reports is no longer enough. Listening every month to the impacted families who can only shame Sheriff Martinez for noncompliance is no longer enough. Use your bully pulpit to do the job you were appointed to. Hold the SDSO to account and demand transparency and justice in the deaths of those who have died in the sheriff's care. It's time to insist as a board that she comply with SB 519 and release all CLERB reports as the law requires. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Christian Castello.
Hi, hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so my name is Christian Castillo. I'm a university student from San Diego State, and I was brutally assaulted in the sheriff's custody based off of me not having any gang affiliation. My stuff was taken from me. I had 2 hats, a jacket, pack of cigarettes, a chocolate bar that was worth a lot of money because of its properties, and a pair of shoes. And the sheriff's report wrote that I had no shoes on when they took me into custody, which was a complete false allegation. I wanted to see if I could get some compensation for the loss of my property and me getting assaulted when I was in custody due to not having any gang affiliation. It was pretty clear to see that there was no interactions between me and the sheriff deputies that they would give me any attention for, especially when I went out of my way to fill out a missing property form, which was given to me and was said on the report that there was no missing property form filled out. So I don't know where my documents are going, but I have filed them correctly and provisionally to have them be suited for me to gain some sort of fundamental compensation for the well, I mean, everything really is on the deputies for not getting to me in time, assaulted by a gang. There's about 2 of them. I don't really know who they were, but the sheriffs could find out. They knew nicknames, and the people in jail.
Thank you. Your time is up. Next, we will call Michael Serna. Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yes, my name is Michael Serna. I'm the father of Elisa Serna, who died in Las Colinas on November 11, 2019. You know, I hear all these stories time and time again, and we're here in support of these families that these recent reports have come out, the Vogelman family and the Bowman family, and even, you know, those that are there in the audience, the Pittman family. You know, you guys continue to find the sheriffs have no guilt, that they were just doing their jobs over and over again. But you hear all these stories, even this last story of this young man, that how he was neglected and all these things happened to him. Why? Because the sheriff's department is not doing its job. They shuffle people around. They could care less of what happens to people in there. And sometimes they are what happens to people in there when they bully them, just like we saw in my daughter's case. Do you remember how Deputy Sean Foster, drugged my daughter when she was in the middle of a seizure, just threw her in the cell, drug her by her collar? Is this a coincidence that all these things happened over and over again and all the stories are similar? No, it's not. You would think as a board, you would say, hey, something is wrong here. We need to stand up and be a voice for all of these who have not a voice anymore. Why? Because they died in the sheriff's custody. You need not to be a rubber stamp for Kelly Martinez, who cultivates an atmosphere and a culture of death in that county jail when she refuses to hold her deputies accountable. You must be the ones to stand up for this county, for the constituents, and for those who have died.
Thank you, Michael. Your time is up. Next, we will call Paloma Serna.
My name is Paloma Serna. I'm the mother of Elisa Serna, who was killed on November 11, 2019 by retired Deputy Rashawn Foster, Deputy Lucas Lacey Lovisa, Deputy Tony Hall Bennett, Dana Lee Pasquale, Carol Gilmore, Frederic Van Lenti, and many more. And I am with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Lives in Custody. Kelly Martinez always wants to make it a point to say that in custody deaths do not happen under her watch. In 2025, we have 2 in custody deaths, Donald Duckett and James Pittman. I would like to send my condolence to them. In 2024, Kelly had 10 in custody deaths, in which this is the accurate number. She is excluding Eric Van Tyne, in whom she did a compassion release. She should have compassion for individual incarcerated in the start of her career. I wonder how many more compassion release Kelly and Gore did to keep their in custody deaths low. In 2023, Kelly had 11 in custody deaths, in which I claim Patricia Adamson as being her next of kin. I am very, very disappointed to know that along with Patricia Adamson killing 4 other individuals' death, CLERB did not find Kelly and her department, the deputies and medical staff responsible for these senseless killings. I remember when this same board found no one at fault for my daughter's death. The video evidence shows different. Justice for our loved ones. The last thing I want to say to this board is shame, shame, shame.
Thank you. Next, we will call Sabrina Whittle. Sabrina, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. Hello, my name is Sabrina Weddle, Saxon Rodriguez's older sister. I want to start by saying it's sad that we're 10 minutes late and we still only get 2 minutes, and yet we're in a rush for these families to stop speaking, whether it be we don't know their case or we do know their case. I'm here tonight, not in person, but via Zoom, to let you guys know you did a horrible job with the Raymond Wilkerman case. Once again, actions justified, sustainable. I'm not too sure if it has to happen to one of your guys' family members to actually advocate, but this can happen to your neurodivergent child when they're having an episode, a bad reaction to medicine. The difference between me, though, as an RBT, and the difference between a sheriff deputy, I won't kill your child. Your child will make it home to you when they're in a mental health crisis, because I know how to de-escalate. That's something that the sheriffs don't know how to do. But according to you guys and these deaths, it's sustainable. It's justified. And it's going to continue to be like that. Just like the deputy said to the one lady, go ahead, report it. I'm not going to get in trouble. So the sheriffs are hiring, right? I can apply and become a sheriff and get away with murder, because it's clear as day that they can do what the fuck they want, when they want, how they want. And if that includes murder, they're gonna do it. Another mouth off of welfare, right? I'm so sick and tired of being at these meetings. That's why I'm not there tonight, because we're saying the same thing over and over to people that are gonna continue to show that they do not care. It's sick. And I know you guys are about to cut my time. So Melissa Burns, if you're listening, Brian Powell, Andrew Radovich, Maxwell Rimple, Andre Wanzer. Yeah, all of them.
Thank you. Next, we will call Darwin Fishman. Darwin,
Good
can you
evening.
hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Darwin Fishman, you can hear us, Racial Justice Coalition San Diego. It's clear. You can hear me. Just calling to support the families that called in. I'm glad they're doing it, taking the time out and to go back through personal tragedies, and to also hold you guys, CLERB, accountable for the decisions you make and understand the impact it has on family members in the community and how we see you. And it's really sad. Glad to be here. I'm glad here to support the families. Also encourage you, Claire, to continue to do more. Go back to your town halls. Go back to your policy recommendations. Reintroduce them 2, 3, 4 times. Do press releases when they're rejected by the sheriff's department. So to continue to do that really difficult work to above and beyond your call. But it's needed. And hopefully the families and their testimony tonight will convince you to do that and to really dig in your heels and know that they need the support. I know when I was on the CRB, old CRB for the city of San Diego, when I went into those meetings and went on to vote, the police had representatives there, and the police did very well to advocate for themselves. Families don't have representatives at that point when you're voting. So I hope you take it to heart, and that you've seen the not just the families, but also what's talked about in the community and the concerns that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Tammy.
Hi, hi, my name is Tammy Wilson. I am the wife of Omar Marino Arroyo, who died at the Central Jail on January 6th, 2021. First, I just want to say that I'm there support, or I'm sorry, I'm not there, but I'm here via Zoom to support all the families that are in the crowd today and for the families that are online. I just keep hearing this injustice. It's really disappointing. In my husband's case, he was having a mental health crisis. And instead of being taken to a hospital, he was arrested and sent to jail. My husband died less than 12 hours later. He was not being monitored at all, not in a medical ward, just in a regular holding cell. He was in active psychosis. And I keep hearing over and over of all these families that their loved ones was having a mental health crisis at the time or mental disability and being sent to jail. It's unbelievable. You know, I don't understand why it just keeps happening and all the findings are justified. It's really disappointing. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Elka.
Yes, before my time starts, I don't know what is going on with your system because I was logged in very much in advance and somebody kept putting my hand down. My name is Ilka Weston. I'm with North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Kids to Kids Worldwide, and TAP for adults and youth in detention. You know, I know that there's the family that I spoke about previously. They had a family death. And the interesting part when we are listening to the families that are coming is that drug addiction and mental health is systematic as well as generational. Mental health and drug addiction should not be treated in jails and institutions. You know, it kind of makes me wonder, like, for instance, jail guards ignore inmate begging for his life. For more than an hour, he called for help as he was tortured. Family blames San Diego County Jail for son's death by torture. You know, it keeps getting worse, but the problem remains the same. Kelly Martinez needs to be removed. Why is it that the Citizens Review Board and the county can't get their act together and do what they did in San Mateo County and approve the fact that we need her out of office? She was the one who was underneath Gore, and Gore was pushed down our throat by Tony Atkins. And then it was Kelly Martinez turning to a Democrat and the advice of Tony Atkins. We should hold the people that endorsed her and forced her down our throat as well. This is getting so upsetting. There is no such thing as perk, by the way. That's just a way to arrest people. We need to stand up harder.
Thank you. And last caller, Sandy Woodall.
Hello, good evening. Cindy Weddle here, representing North County Equity and Justice Coalition. Also, I am the mother of Saxon Rodriguez, who died in Central Jail in 2021. And I wanted to make sure that all the names of the people responsible for my son's death are said.
So we have Brian Powell, Andrew Randovich, Maxwell Rimple, Andre Wanzer, responsible for Saxon, July 20th, 2021 on the 4th floor. We have nurses Melissa Burns, Reggie Barreto, Carrie Cavello, Ria Encarnacion, Karen Hendricks, Marty Banza, Kelly Payne, Levy Santos, and Chantel Williams. 9 nurses couldn't save my brother because he was already dead from the fentanyl. Earlier was mentioned that time checks are always a concern. 5 minutes and 28 seconds cost my brother his life. If he would time like paid job, like 6 figures a year, they could have checked my brother on time. Caitlin Hendricks asked my brother the day before he died if he wanted a shot. Did she get a yes? Did she get a no? Did she get a grunt? I also want to say when Paul Parker was here, we got a lot more answers, a lot more transparency, a lot more accountability. And it's crazy that he had to leave because exactly what is happening in front of our eyes, lack of accountability. It's like he said, we're banging our head against the wall to get answers. But like I said, there's a lot of talk about neurodivergent children, and I pray that this never happens to one of yours and that you don't get the same lack of answers, transparency. Like I said, your kid won't die in my hand.
Thank you. Your time is up. Chair Pintara, and that concludes request to speak for item number 3.
Okay, thank you to everyone who participated in non-agenda public comment tonight. We will move on to item number 4, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion from anyone of the board to approve the minutes? Dr. Brown, is there a second? And Mr. Ware, if you could call the roll.
Chair Pintar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kina Ayub, yes. Member Brown, Member Fasano,
Yes.
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Member Ware.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5. We don't have a presentation training tonight. So item number 6, I know Brett has a lengthy report, so I'll let you get started.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brett Kalina. I am the executive officer of CLERB, and my pronouns are he, him. Just to give a few background information for the board and the public is that we have presented 2 conditional offers of employment to 2 special investigators. So we are hoping that they come on board as quickly as possible. I do want to bring up what's happening with the Board of Supervisors medical jurisdiction. The county council has submitted their memo with the proposed matching ordinance that goes along with our proposed rules and regulations. That has all been submitted to the board, and that both of those have been submitted to labor relations and have been submitted to the unions, and they've been given a deadline to respond. And depending upon how that process goes, it could be as soon as a few months that the board chooses to bring it up again for a vote. So it could be sooner than maybe we originally had expected. So that's good news. Case management software. We are, Chief Deputy Norris is working really hard to get this new case management software. We really are excited about this project. Our case management software is on its last leg, and it's limping along. I will say that one of the reasons we've had a difficult time in getting some numbers and data out to the board and with an annual report is that the system can no longer run any reports. We would have to do every single item by hand going back years, and we've been trying to avoid that as much as possible. But we have some good news that we're moving along on the case management, so we hope to have that, in place and up and running at least by either summer or fall. We did receive the sheriff's response to the letter of concern. There wasn't enough time to get it onto the agenda. That will be supplied with the next agenda item for April's meeting. But I wanted you to know that we did receive that. We have forwarded that to council, and they're working on that and working on giving them at least somewhat of a deadline for us to get responses so that we can get that process started with the study.
I'm just going to interject that this is the letter of concern that we sent to the sheriff's office regarding the death study data, that we recall that we had asked for the consultant that we hired to do the analysis of not just the numbers of deaths, but why. We had not, the consultant did not believe they were getting all of the data that they needed. We sent a letter of concern expressing why we thought it was so important that they get this data, and she just, the sheriff's office just responded to us, but it was too late for it to be added to tonight's agenda. So we will see it, I think, attached to next month.
That's correct.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
And I already talked about the annual report. Again, we are trying our best to not have to do this by hand, but we'll see how that goes. I want to take this time to thank you for co-presenting with me to a group. I want you to be able to talk about that in yours, but it was a great way for us to do this together, and I really appreciated that opportunity and look forward to more of those opportunities. We had started end of last fall with asking for community members and the board members to provide us with information on how we should move forward in 2025 with our goals. And so I want to just talk to you a little bit about the framework that we've set up as a staff to focus on for 2025, and we want to put these out formally, but for now it's just a draft for us to set it for us, and these are in order of how we think about them as priorities. One is that we just need to continue to provide thorough, balanced, fact-driven investigations and be as transparent as possible within the bounds of the law. Number one, that's always going to be our top priority. We want to give the community an opportunity to be heard. One of the commenters talked about it, getting out, doing town halls, those types of things. I would love that opportunity to get out there. Right now, we are barely squeaking by with our investigations and trying to get them within our one-year deadlines. And so we've been working really hard to try to get ahead so that we can do that. I also hope that this new jurisdiction that the board gives us, I know I told you that we're on par if the board approves the medical jurisdiction, that we would have a community outreach specialist and a data analyst to be brought on board. That will significantly increase our ability to get out there and do that. I just don't know when that will happen. That a lot will be determined on when the Board of Supervisors approves the jurisdiction. We want to ensure that the peace officers, probation officers, sheriff's deputies adhere to California law along with their established policies and procedures. We want to continue making those recommendations to prevent the violations, to protect lives, and reduce litigation risk for the county. We also wanted to, remind everyone that we continue with the board's decisions when there are appeals to the Civil Service Division. And that is what we take on. We are the ones that go to those civil service appeals, and we are the ones that defend the actions of the boards in those situations. One of the big things that I think we need to focus on for 2025 is to continue to increase the understanding of those law enforcement policies and procedures. Continue to have presentations, to try to get out documentation, again, through an annual report, to look at what are the common policies that are violated, what are we seeing consistently, and we would also like to continue to invite collaborators to speak on nuanced areas. This came up quite a bit: mental health, PERT, blue envelope, juvenile detention, use of force. Those are the themes that we got from both the community and the board as important things for us to bring to the community and the board's attention. And lastly, to provide the public with as much information as legally possible to evaluate the work of the Sheriff's Office and the Probation Department. Again, policy recommendation results. We did just recently receive 5 policy recommendation responses. That just came. There was no opportunity, again, with everything going on, to get that to you this time. That will be part of the presentation in April as well. I appreciate them getting these responses back, and hopefully we'll get a few more before our liaison moves on. our case data. We really want to get this with the new case management system to get that data live and on our website so that we aren't having to prepare those reports on a monthly basis. Everyone is seeing what we're seeing when those cases come in and when they are closed. And then more information for the community and for the board on how many allegations we see. So I know we talk about cases, but we also need to talk about the different allegations, how often we're seeing certain allegations and what our results are. And so we need to get that out so you're just aware of that and the community's aware of how many of those are. We're going to be talking tonight about the FG3 memo that I basically wrote. So I'm very familiar with it. It was signed off by FG3, but we're going to give people a chance to talk about that today. I hope I can give some responses if people have questions and from the public comments as well. I want to thank, we have this new process with probation. First and foremost, we came up with a policy at the end of last year for them to monthly report use of force involving juveniles, and they have done that for our first month of doing that. So I want to thank them for doing that and timely doing that. And as we speak this week, we will be filing over 20 different petitions to access the juvenile file records for those large group of GBIs that came in at the end of last year. We expect that to take a little bit of time because not only do those petitions have to be filed and addition filings that go with that, but also the head judge over there will be having to review each and every report and file to determine whether that can happen. So, however, that being said, of the batch of 28 cases that came over at the end of the last year, we've already determined that 6 of those juvenile files cases have been sealed, which means we will, we didn't put it on for this meeting as we already have a lengthy session tonight. And so expect there will be 6 summary dismissals next month because we cannot even request the court to open them to review because it's been too long. And then lastly, I just want to talk, we have 13 new cases for February. We're still on the little bit lower end. We've closed 23, so we currently have 140 open investigations. I would still, after tonight, I think it's an important thing to point out that after tonight, when we make a recommendation, we will no longer have a single suicide case left on our docket. There has not been one since middle of 2023 timeframe. And so I'm just letting you all know that that is a positive thing for us on our docket list. Yep. That's where I'm at.
Do any board members have a question for Mr. Kalina? I have one, but I'm going to see if anyone else has one before we move on. Yes, Mr. Ware.
Positions again that we're looking to add. The first is community outreach specialist. What was the second one?
Data analyst.
Thank you.
He may go into a little bit more of that discussion when we talk about the FGGG memo and on the next item, because he did lay out in that memo what those positions would be and what they would be doing for us. I also wanted to, I hope that it will come up in our next discussion because you talked about hiring 2 more investigators. The ratio of investigators that we currently have versus the number of deputies and law enforcement officers that we have from the 2 departments, the ratio of the number of staff that we have compared to other oversight boards is very, very, very low. So we really need to get these additional investigators hired, and our investigators do a lot of work for the number of cases that we have. So we can talk about that a little bit more in the next item. And I just have one question. If no one else has a question for Mr. Kalina? I wasn't here last month. I'm sorry. Did you have any other discussion in the public session about the probation agreement? Or I just feel like that is, I'm very familiar with all the work that you and Ellen have been doing and talking to probation counsel on trying to get access to those juvenile records so we can look at those GBI or gross bodily injury cases. Great bodily injury cases from the juvenile department. I don't know that everyone else is very familiar with that. I don't know if you or Ellen can just give us like 1 minute on what we're trying to achieve.
So I think the big confusion that comes is that up until fairly recently, there was an agreement between probation and CLERB that they just provided that information freely. And then with review from their counsel, it was determined that technically every request to access anything within a juvenile's file, and that includes these use of force reports that are completed by the officers, right? Those still go into the juvenile's file, and therefore it's protected by the juvenile court. Nobody can have access unless you have a specific exemption under 827 of the WIC California law. We are trying that. I have requested a couple of legislators to take a look at granting CLERB one of those exemptions. That will take some time. That'll be a process. I hope that we can get there someday. But right now, the process is that we have to, one, be alerted by probation that these events occur. Number two, we then petition the court based upon the information that we've agreed on by the judge, which is they give us enough information that allows us to file a petition specifically in that case for them to review this particular part of the case. So we're not asking for access to the entire juvenile file. We are really just looking at this use of force. And then that petition would then go to that judge. He would take a look in camera by himself at the file and make a determination as to whether or not CLERB's jurisdiction fits in that particular case, and then either grant us access or not. And then at that point in time, we would also we're now learning that we have to also take into consideration cases that may be sealed while we have access to the records and even after the CLERB has made a determination, because just in a recent case, CLERB found against a few deputies on a use of force recently that has gone to civil service. That case has now been sealed, and we are trying to figure out what that will even mean for that civil service going forward, because technically that file now does not exist. So there's a lot of little factors that are going in. Matt and Adam are doing great and really trying to help us move that along. But I can tell you that our council bill for them has really been exceeded from what we've been used to in the past.
Thank you. I don't think that most members of the board were familiar with that this work had been going on and that we've been trying to get access to these files. So I wanted you to be aware of it. Mr. Ware.
No, just to follow up on real quick response on the process to seal a case. Is it simply the attorney, juvenile's attorney, making requests? Is it the family? And if so, why aren't all the cases sealed?
A lot of the cases become sealed automatically now when the juvenile turns 18. And it's our understanding that the law regarding sealing has changed over the years and has become more helpful in terms of trying to enable a youth who has been a part of the juvenile system to walk away at age 18 with a clean slate. So basically the juvenile is then able to go out as an 18-year-old, becoming an adult, and not say that they've never been involved with the juvenile system at all. They have no record. So that happens automatically. And then there are other bases upon which records can be sealed. With respect to the GBI cases, which do not require complaints under CLERB's jurisdiction, we do believe and are hopeful that with the ongoing cooperation from probation in giving us the GBI cases more contemporaneously when they occur, that those cases will have longer period of time before the juvenile ages out and has his or her record sealed. So, but we're going to get people that could be in the system that we could get a complaint about or a GBI when they're 17 and a half. And we'll maybe throw in our 827 petition and go through that process. And by then, the record will have already been sealed. And this sealing is very difficult for any party to get records from. County Council has had the issue with, defending the county in civil lawsuits, and they can't get the records unsealed either. So it's more of a system-wide type of thing, and I think the key is going to be getting the GBI and the no complaint specified cases on CLERB's radar so we can file our 827 petitions as quickly as possible. We do have a good template that we are putting forward with every petition. It's the attachment 7. It also includes requests for testimony, whether or not we may end up needing that from a probation officer. So we are trying to move forward as quickly as we can with the cases that we have, while being cognizant that some of the cases will time out because of sealing issues. We also have some case-by-case disputes we may have with probation as to jurisdictional issues that we will likely need to work together with the court to resolve.
Does that
Hang on, let's go in order here. Mr. Ware, go ahead and finish your question, and then I'm going to go to Dr. Brown.
does that include the 707 cases as well?
Because
The delinquency cases? I'm sorry, the dependency cases? No.
those records can be sealed as well, but we wouldn't have access or would not request those unless there was a use of force within that particular investigate or that juvenile's file. That juvenile can have multiple cases within their juvenile file. So not only is it pulling out just our portion of it, but there might be multiple things within that file that they have to wade through just to get us that, which could include dependency.
Okay, great, thank you.
Dr. Brown.
Okay, I apologize for that, Tim. I just have a question. Since our juvenile system is now housing people that are over the age of 18, how will all of this be impacted? I mean, when we're talking about, I'm a little confused. We get people in and out as 22, 23. Wow. How will that make any difference on any of the law?
Well, I'll defer to Brett, but it's going to depend when they entered into the juvenile system and what happens to them, and then when they get out, and those types of issues.
When you read the sealing laws, it doesn't mean it's automatically done at 18. So presumably, my reading of that is that if they're still in the system, that doesn't mean that the case would be sealed just because they turned 18. So it really is a matter of them being out and then not being in the system for them to be able to seal those records so that they can say on a job interview or a school application that they don't have that. Now, there are still some entities that do have access. So like a district attorney's office in prosecution of an adult may have access to juvenile files, but it's very, very limited.
Thank you.
Thank you, and sorry for taking over your report there, Brett, but I've been eager for the public and members of the board to hear a little bit more about the work that they're doing to make sure that we can get access to those records. We'll move on to item number 7, board chair's report. Mr. Kleina mentioned that we did a presentation last month on February 10th. He and I made a joint presentation to the International Visitor Leadership Program, which is a partnership between the San Diego Diplomacy Council and the U.S. State Department. It's essentially an international exchange program that hosted a delegation of 26 participants from around the world who are learning about how different jurisdictions and local jurisdictions mostly investigate human rights violations. They wanted to know about CLERB's jurisdictions, how our investigations work, how we arrive at our findings and make policy recommendations. And the participants were primarily prosecutors, human rights attorneys, judges, public defenders, and they were from countries all around the world: Turkey, Kazakhstan, Slovakia, Kenya, Ukraine, Jordan, to name just a few. So that was happy to do that with you. I also just wanted to report that I did check in with each of the Board of Supervisors offices this week or this month, particularly in anticipation of us having this public forum today on the memo that went from the Finance and Good Government Group that Mr. Kleina helped prepare, that went to all of the Board of Supervisors regarding the proposal to expand our jurisdiction. They did not have any questions at this time, but we just checked in about that memo and about other CLERB business that was on their agendas for the month. And finally, since I couldn't be at last month's meeting, I want to apologize. Work got in the way, my other work. But I wanted to take a moment to officially welcome our newest member. I don't know if you got introduced last month, Mr. Mendelson. Jim Mendelson, who joined us for the first time last month. He is a Marine, a Naval Academy graduate, a fighter pilot, and an attorney, and we're happy to have you, so welcome.
Thank you very much.
I also wanted to thank a few of our outgoing members for their time in service. Mr. Wilson was a longtime member of our board. He offered a lot of important insight, both in open session and in our case deliberations. Mr. Hayes, Andrew Hayes, was also last month with this, was his last meeting. I understand he said a few words, and he'll now be serving the county in an official role. And Miss Bonnie Kink, who has served on this board for many years, as well as the city's community relations, police department community relations review board. She was our secretary and served on the executive board with me for a few years as well. So we're grateful for all of these past and our new member. And that concludes the chair's report. And now we will move to item number 8. This is the new business talking about the memo, improving public safety through effective civilian oversight of law enforcement. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Kalina, and then we'll open it up to the board for questions, and we will also take public comment. I'm sorry, we'll take public comment first, and then we will go to the board questions.
All right, first we will call Yusuf Miller.
Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. And when we're talking about safety from this board, I think we need to, again, project into the future about the impacts of Prop 36 and what that's going to mean for your jobs. We already see all of these upset people. We've seen all these loss of lives, all of these conditions we call unnecessary. And when it comes to our Prop 36, we're already seeing where the targets of Prop 36 are not the targets that are filling our jails. It's not that target. So we see where over-policing of people in addiction, over-policing of people with mental health, these are the issues that we were just talking about today. So we can unfortunately see that we can predict that we're going to have a crisis again. I hope I'm wrong, but we need to prepare. CLERB, you need to prepare. There's going to be more cases, more work to be done. We need more investigators to prepare for this onslaught that is being propelled by Prop 36. We, as the Saving Lives in Custody California, we don't want our family group to grow. It just organically grows from the nature of what's going on. We don't want that to happen, and we fear being so large that it will be just, I don't want to say unbearable because we do this out of a thing of love, but it'll be painful to know that so many families have to come together for relief between one another. This public safety is going to need some innovation. It's not going to just need looking at what's happening in the jails, but also preventative measures and alternatives to incarceration and all of those things that we need to weave in together to make sure we have a culture of decarceration in our jails so that we don't have these loss of life in the jail in the first place. So I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Tom Packard.
Tom Packard again. The Deputy CIO memo of February 6th was an encouraging step, but please do all you can to keep the pressure on to expedite the meet and confer process with the labor organizations. I know you don't have any official involvement in that process, but as possible, I hope someone can remind the labor organizations that they need not fear this change. If they're well-trained, behaving up to job standards, that the CLERB oversight might actually help them in putting pressure on the sheriff to better support medical staff. And regarding staffing increases, as Chair Pintar noted, your current staff ratio is much worse than the other jurisdictions listed. So please advocate strongly with the board to give the CLERB extra needed resources and let us know how we can help. I think any budget increases to the CLERB will be offset by much lower payments for lawsuits against the sheriff. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Next, we have Cesar Javier.
Cesar Javier, good evening again. And I am highly spirited because we have a new member of this board who is a patriot and a warrior. This great republic is shaped by blood. War after war after war after war. And this is a war, again, a crisis that's going on. And there are casualties on both sides. My conceptual point here, a value analysis, is that if there is iniquity, meaning more haves than the have-nots, this is the war we are in now. I had an acquaintance with my research. Criminality is highly correlated with poverty and lack of education. Warriors has to, what you call that, understand what our, the author of Arts of War, if we could convert, this is the opportunity, if we could convert the enemy to our side, then we win the war. And that's very difficult. That's what we are trying to do, some solving problems. It's all about the leadership. It's all about considering the physical thing, the structure, the organization of this crisis. The government is failing, sir. The politicians come and go, but we stay here, trying to do our best to keep our republic intact. And that's our role. Humbly, I am a member of a soldier's family. Denise, tattered with bullets in Afghan war. Now we're facing another war.
Thank you,
you, sir, for this.
Thank you. If I could just remind our speakers that this is item number 8 regarding the finance group and good government, I can't always remember the FGGG memo regarding this particular proposal to the Board of Supervisors. That is the item that we're on. If there are other speakers that want to speak to that item, please have them, please introduce them, Naris.
Thank you, Chair Pintar. We have Paloma Serna. Paloma?
Yes, my name is Paloma. I'm the mother of Elisa Serna, who died November 11, 2019. I'm with North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Lives in Custody, California. And so here reading this Exhibit E, the memo, you know, we really do need to push and investigate compassion release deaths. Those are very important that we get data, and not only receiving data about how many in custody deaths are taking place in our local jails, but also to who's going to be held accountable for those deaths. You know, Kelly Martinez tried to do a compassionate release with the last, well, she probably was going to do a compassionate release with the last in custody death of 2024 in December, but the individual did pass and transport to the hospital. And so it's very important to know what those numbers are. I'm very sure that our in custody deaths are really much higher than what is being reported. As we had noticed with Eric Van Tine, his Kelly will not take responsible for that. And also to looking at how, you know, finances does, you know, you guys do need the finances to be able to do your work, you know, and especially in hiring more investigators. You know, we need you know, medical staff to be held accountable too. You know, deputies and medical, they point the fingers at each other. It's great to hear that suicide. There was no suicide on the workload, but you know what? People are still dying. And so I'm not pleased. I'm glad there's no suicide, but people are still dying. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will call Ilka.
Thank you very much. My name, Ilka Weston, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, K to K Worldwide and TAP for adults and youth with Yusuf Miller. I want to re-echo what Yusuf is saying. I know people on the board. I know people in that room. And we all want things to get better. And it seems to be getting worse. For a man just to, a week ago, get murdered and intentionally put in a cell with somebody who's supposed to be alone, we really need to be much more focused about getting Kelly Martinez removed. If we say PERT is coming, we need to make sure PERT cannot arrest individuals and ask them to go outside and then bring them in for causing a disturbance, which happens probably 99% of the time. I know perfectly well that you guys are really great at doing research, so I would encourage you to check out just how many times when PERT does come that happens. But we need to remove Kelly Martinez. Enough's enough. The deaths are increasing and they're getting worse. We all saw Elisa Serna's videos. I can't get them out of my mind every single day. We hear about family members with mental health conditions and drug addiction is self-medicating. That's why parents want them out of jail, even if it's drugs. That's why they don't let them stay in there, because they love their family members and they know that they need to make sure they get them in a hospital. So we need to be prepared to ask for more. The removal of Kelly Martinez and the actual building of a mental health support as well as drug addiction support facility not operated by the sheriff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chair Pintar, we have one comment to be read for the records, if you allow me to read it. And this is from Robin Sales. CLERB's plan to hire a community outreach coordinator is good. It is important that the community hears about your mission. Equally important is that CLERB hears from community experts. Invite groups to present during monthly meetings as part of your training and outreach efforts. Hearing from LGBTQA, behavioral health, and SUD advocates can provide knowledge that could impact your recommendations. And that concludes our request to speak for this item.
Thank you. We will now move to the report. Do you have a report on this item?
No, I mean, if you want me to address any of the questions, I can, but.
Sure. Were there any, there weren't really any questions?
There weren't many questions, but I will say
Yeah.
to the comment made by Mr. Miller, we are highly aware of the new rules and regulations that have come into place which allows the Sheriff's Department additional ways and the DA's office, for that matter, to have people arrested for different violations that hadn't been in 2024. So we're very aware of that. It has been discussed. It's been discussed within us, and we're going to try to monitor it the best we can. There just isn't a whole lot of data yet to say what those numbers are really looking like yet. But we hope to learn that in the next few months.
Are there questions about the memo that you all should have seen and read before tonight for Mr. Kalina? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Thanks everyone for your questions tonight from members of the public. We will now move on. I mentioned during my remarks that Ms. Kank had left the board. So we are in need of a new board secretary that would fill that vacancy through June 30th. And then after that, we will talk about nominating officers for the following year. So this person, this would be a secretary just to serve and through the end of June, to fill out Ms. Kank's term. Are there any nominations to serve as board secretary through the end of June? You can volunteer or someone can nominate you. I will nominate somebody if somebody else doesn't nominate because I can't do it by myself. So you have a nomination? Anybody? All right. I would like to nominate Ms. Fasano if she's willing to take the role. You can say yes or no. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other nominations? I say thank you too. And it could be short term, it could be long term. You could decide you love it and then nominate yourself to be the secretary for the following year. Are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, can we call the roll for, we will close nominations and proceed to elect Ms. Fasano as our secretary. If you could call the roll.
Do we need a motion in a second?
I don't know if we need a motion. We probably do. Is the,
That what the motion should say, what exactly the words of the motion say that we select Ms. Stefano as the
to nominate.
Nominate Ms. Stefano as the secretary, as the interim secretary of our CLERB board.
And I'll second it. Now we should call the roll. Thank you.
Chair Pintar?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kina Ayub, yes. Member Brown? Member Fasano?
Yes.
Member Mendelson?
Yes.
Member Ware?
Yes.
Motion passes with 6.
Unanimous. Welcome to our new secretary. Thank you so much. Now we need to either select or have people volunteer as the nominations committee. For those of you who are newer to the board and haven't been through our nominations process in the past, usually we have a committee of 2 to 3 people who will make suggestions of who should serve in the officer roles for the following year. And then typically they will confer with those folks. They can both take nominations from other board members and then check with those members who have been nominated to make sure they're willing to accept those nominations and then present a panel of nominees to the board at the following meeting. So is there anyone who would like to serve on the nominating committee for officers? I could nominate you to serve on the nominating committee. Mr. Ware, you have served on this committee before. Would you like to serve on it again? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. He says no, but Dr. Brown.
You already said yes. I'll serve.
Okay. So I just need at least one other member.
Say no, man.
What is it?
I will do it.
You will. Okay. So we have Adele and Ms. Fasano and Dr. Brown. Do I need to have more than 2, Ellen?
No, you do
Okay.
not need to have more than
Okay.
2.
So now I need a motion to have our nominating committee be Ms. Fasano and Dr. Brown, if someone can make that motion. I will make the motion that the nominating committee be Dr. Brown and Ms. Fasano, and if we could have a second. You can second it. Okay, Ms. Kina Ayub, if you could call the roll.
Chair Pintar?
Yes.
Vice Chair Kina Ayub, yes. Member Brown?
Yes.
Member Fasano?
Yes.
Member Mendelson?
Yes.
Member Ware?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Just to clarify, either Ms. Gross or Mr. Kalina, do they need to bring those nominations back next month or the following month? Because it's,
So Remember, yeah, because we would have them bring them back,
Mm-hmm.
and then the next month would be for
The vote.
the actual vote.
Okay. So those nominations need to be presented to the board at next month's meeting, and then the following meeting, we would have the vote. Thank you. Okay, there is no unfinished business tonight. We will move to board member comments. Does any member of the board wish to make a comment tonight? Are you raising your hand? Okay. Ms. Keen Ayub and then Dr. Brown.
I just wanted to publicly say thank you to member Bonnie Kink, who is not with us or is not going to serve anymore. She did an excellent job. She really asked questions. I know she was very quiet when she sat up here, but she was very detailed in closed session. So I'm going to miss her.
I will second those comments. Dr. Brown, do you have additional comments?
The entire CLERB staff for all of the work they're doing. It's a huge load with quite with some challenges, and I just want to acknowledge that I see you and I hear you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I would also second those comments. As we saw in the FGG memo, we are operating with a very lean staff. They produce a lot of reports in a very short period of time on a monthly basis. So thank you for your work. Okay, we will move on to board member queries for the sheriff and probation's liaisons. Hello.
Bear with me, my voice is not the greatest. Ross Lewin, Supervising Probation Officer, Internal Affairs Unit. Got a couple things following up from last month. We received a few questions by way of Executive Officer Brett Kalina, some questions, and I can speak to a few of those. And then I have a couple other brief announcements to make. So regarding some of the questions that were received, there was a question that was answered by our chief, general terms, about where CLERB's information is available to our youths, to folks dealing with our department. It's CLERB's information has been featured for years, as long as I've been in this position, is 10 years, on our citizens complaint form. So CLERB's contact information is part of that form. And here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, it will be placed in our what we call a youth handbook. I think we've talked about that before with one of CLERB's previous recommendations following a case that dealt with some property, of youth property, and while they're in custody. Anyway, the youth handbook is given to every youth who comes into our facilities. There is a section with resources, and CLERB's information will be added to that if my plan goes the way I want it to. I don't see why there's going to be any resistance to that, but it has to get vetted through the process. I saw a draft today. It was on there, and it just has to be signed off, and it'll be live. So that'll be another place that's available. And other than that, it's our complaint forms that has CLERB's information. They're available in every one of our regional offices countywide. So that would answer that question. I'll kind of skip around a little bit.
Okay.
There was a question about the autism training that I know I talked about several months ago that was postponed because our provider was no longer with us. A new provider was located, and was approved through BSCC to start doing trainings for our folks, and that started this year. So as of today, in fact, there was two courses today. We have had 6 training courses or 4-hour blocks called Autism, a Guide for Law Enforcement. So those are running, and those are in the mix in our training catalog and being rolled out to our officers. The other 2 are kind of combined, addressing the list of potential GBI cases that we submitted. On Monday, you'll get another, Monday's the 10th, so that's the agreed upon date, where you'll get another list, not as extensive. However, there was a question as to why certain cases aren't there or weren't listed, but one in particular was connected to a CLERB complaint. I'm not going to mention the names or anything like that, but it didn't. The answer is it didn't meet the threshold. It didn't meet the criteria for GBI. Otherwise, it would have been listed. So, the question regarding the JJC inspection report numbers, JJC, Juvenile Justice Commission, they're a different entity. We're following the DOJ definition for GBI. Their definitions of serious incidents or serious assaults, they don't necessarily align perfectly. And a serious incident may have no injury, depending on what it is. It doesn't mean there's any injury at all. It could be, a group of youths who aren't cooperating and don't want to go up to their rooms when it's time for lights out. And you have 20 kids that are non-compliant. That could develop into a serious incident, but there's no injury. There probably is no use of force. So it doesn't exactly align or equate, but that would be the reason that, and you're not, and anyone that, of those numbers that were reported in that JJC report, 2023, I believe, if there was 623 total uses of force at East Mesa and 536 at YTC, and any of those from 2023, when my unit did those reviews of each case by case, if there was one that qualified for potential reporting, it was put on the list. So that's kind of what I could say about that. I did bring there's no photograph, but I brought a blank, a copy of one of our citizens complaint forms, and I'll leave it here, and you can see CLERB's. It's a front back document, but it's right prominently displayed on page 1. So I'll leave that here. So couple of announcements. This will be my last meeting, as I will be retiring this month. And I would like to introduce a interim point of contact. We're very fortunate in our unit to have a supervising probation officer, Ana Diaz-Pena, who is here to meet everybody. She will be filling in my capacity until hopefully she's made permanent, but that process is going on a different track. So, but for now, we have a great person who's learning, who's been with our unit for several months now in an IA capacity, doing those tough investigations. Do you want to say a couple words, or do you want me to sing her praises? I've known, we call her ADP, Ana Diaz-Pena, for many years. We've worked together for years. We've grown up together in the department. She used to be featured on a video that we would show well, still is actually, featured on a video that we show our potential officers as she worked as the administrative supervisor at East Mesa. She's got experience with juvenile institutions, adult, high risk, field supervision, vast experience is critical for a position like this, where you need to kind of have a pretty good view of the department, and she does. So I'm hoping that she'll be our permanent CLERB liaison, but in the interim, you'll hear from her and see her, and it's been a pleasure for the past 10 years-ish, and I wish everybody the best.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
Enjoy your time, and welcome, Ms. Pena.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Question?
And yes, we're going to go to board questions. Mr. Ware.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Question was raised earlier. Someone mentioned Prop 36.
Okay.
So it seems to me that at least here in San Diego, if not the state, that we were moving towards a decrease in the juvenile population in our institutions.
We have significantly, yeah.
Correct. And it seems like Prop 36 is going to go just the opposite as far as increasing that population, as far as the way I see it. The question is, when might we expect that population to start to increase? And how would that be triggered? Is that something that comes from the presiding judge? Is it a probation decision? Is it DCU? Who makes that decision to say Proposition 36 is now in place and we're going to start enforcing that?
Good questions. Initially, if a young person comes into our custody, they haven't been to court. So the initial decision to detain will be a probation decision, but I don't think it's going to be impacted by this legislation. It's the post-disposition. And I don't know when that might manifest itself. We'll have to just watch that and see if there is an uptick in our juvenile population. And that is, we run those numbers every day. And you're right, the trend over the past several years has decreased significantly. 10 years ago, we had almost 1,000 kids in custody, and now it's 200-ish. But we can, if we see that impacting our juvenile population in custody, that is, we could absolutely report back, or even compile a presentation to how that is affecting the juvenile in custody population, if at all.
Hang on, let's make sure that if there's other members that wanted to ask a question, or did you have a comment specific to this issue? And maybe Mr. Ware are you done, Mr. Ware?
Well,
yeah, let Mr. Ware finish this.
The
Thank you.
follow-up, and please correct me, is in hearing when an officer or deputy makes contact with a juvenile on the street, at that time they would call DCU and say, this is what we have, and DCU would make that decision.
No, I mean, if one of our officers, juvenile supervision officer, is in the field seeing their young people on their caseloads, they're not contacting random people. It's people that we already know, that are already under our supervision. If they're in violation, they need to be taken into custody. They'll come in to our new intake center at YTC, and they'll go through the intake process. They're already on probation, so it might be a short time to where they're waiting for a violation hearing at court, and then they might be out, or they might get a whole new commitment depending on what the violation is. Is it serious? Is it a new crime? Is it a violation of their terms of probation? It's different.
Okay.
So, but it's not. We don't have any officers that are out there patrolling, anything like that. We're seeing the young people that are placed on probation by court and then assigned to supervision based on their assessments. Is it going to be, high risk, low risk, based on all the assessment tools that we use. And again, I think total number of youth on supervision is like pretty low. I want to say in the 600-700 range.
Okay, thank you.
Overall. And then of those, there's, I think, a couple hundred in custody. And a chunk of those recently have come back from DJJ, and now they're under our charge. But yeah, that really wouldn't really affect it. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Brown.
Of what was just shared and the whole thing about Proposition 36, if I may, sir, I would like to ask that you advocate on behalf more of transformational justice as opposed to restorative justice. And the unique difference is restorative justice concentrates on making the victim whole. The transformational justice looks at why the person did the victimization in the first place. Were they poor? Were they hungry? Did they have neurodivergent? You know, all of those things. So if you may, you know, I don't know who to go to advocate for us to look more at the transformational justice part of it, you know, looking at the poor, oppression, those kind of things. Can we, you know, seems like that's already part of the juvenile justice system, but I'm asking for someone to advocate for more of that since we got this new law that's been voted.
Well, I could absolutely take it back and report back. You know, you heard how our chief is approaching things last month.
Yes.
She's open to ideas, and absolutely will take it back and put it in my report.
Thank you. Transformational justice.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Are there any other questions? Ms. Keen-Ayub.
Thank you for coming back with that information on the training that you are now doing. Just to understand, it's 2 separate courses on neurodivergence or just autism?
No, it's one course. It's 1 4-hour course.
1 4-hour course. And it's mandatory for every officer to take it?
I can't say it's mandatory right now, but it has been started this year. We have training catalogs that are published. Our training cycle starts every July 1st, where we have to do our 24 hours of mandatory training for our institution staff and 40 hours of training for our casework staff. So this is a class that's available right now. It is being taken and signed up for. It will be in our catalog moving forward. It's not mandatory as far as I know.
So will that or will that not tie into informing the officers that a child's neurodivergence so that it impacts their response to that child?
It's the officers that are taking the course that are learning more about what that looks like, that they can take, just like any other training, those skills, that knowledge back to the line, back to the units.
So there's still,
Will that mean once they finish the training, they're going to know who in the unit might have those situations? The training isn't necessarily connected to that. It's if they do know that, then they can better work with that young person.
and will they be informed that these young people have autism?
I can't say it. I don't know.
Is there a way you can find that out and come back next month?
I won't be here.
Oh,
but
well,
I will put it
thank
down.
you. Thank you. She already nodded.
Yeah. And I think, you know, our chief is aware of those questions and how it ties into ADA, and that's still on the, you know, being looked at on the burners back at the shop, so to speak, that we're trying to figure out how to respond, what it looks like with our policy unit, and it's still on the radar.
Thank you.
Okay. Last question.
The Blue Envelope program, like the sheriff department has a website. Is that part of your program as well?
I don't believe we use that.
So the Blue Envelope program is like a proactive approach to, like, when someone knows that their child or they believe that they have that, they can notify law enforcement beforehand in the event that law enforcement encounters that person. That might be something that you can also, ma'am, you more of that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and absolutely. But here again, when we're out there, the people we deal with, we know. We know them well. You'll get some good perspective down the road from Supervisor Diaz-Pena because she's a current field officer. We're hoping to get her up to our unit, but she can speak to a lot of what's going on now out in the field. But the advantage to being a probation officer, we can develop those relationships, or we do develop those relationships with the adults and the juveniles we supervise, sometimes for years. When I was in the institutions, I worked at one facility for 10 years, and we took it personal. Like we felt like we raised a lot of those kids. I mean, yeah, they came back over and over again, but we knew them. And it was, they knew the look on our face when they came back. We were disappointed, and they were sorry, to be there, and we'd have heart to hearts about it. And that's building relationships. But when they did well, they wanted to let us know. And so that's the bonus. But yes, we'll talk more about that for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin, and again, best of luck in your retirement.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Lieutenant Dave Perkins with the San Diego Sheriff's Office. I just like to real quick say thank you to your service, Officer Lewin. I met him about 10 years ago at a CLERB meeting, and he's a true professional, and it's a great loss to the probation department. So.
Thank you. I was not here last month, so I don't know if there is a particular item that you were going to bring back to us. I do have a question for you, but please go ahead.
I don't recall, EO Kalina, if I don't recall a specific question.
Some questions.
But from last meeting, I don't recall.
Yeah, not.
Okay.
Okay.
From
Yes.
board members.
Did you have a report for us first, though? I'm happy to jump right into questions,
go
but
ahead.
if you had something
No.
for us, please go ahead.
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
Questions for Mr. Perkins before I jump in? No? Okay. So top of mind, I think, for all of us, I know for me and everyone that came tonight, is just how we are able to manage and care for chronically disabled individuals who end up in our jails. I just a general question, can you explain how, when PERT is called and the sheriffs show up, how that's handled? What is the communication if someone calls and asks for PERT, but PERT is not available, and the sheriffs, the deputies show up? How is that communicated, that this was a PERT call?
Yeah.
That's my first question. I'm going to jump. Then,
And sorry, but just to clarify, by chronically disabled, do you mean someone with a mental illness or?
yes, I believe, I'm sorry, I should have clarified. So severe mental illness, chronic mental illness.
Okay.
That seems to be one of the biggest challenges that we encounter with our cases all the time.
Yes.
And my opinion is there does not seem to be good options for where these individuals can be placed so they aren't in jail.
Perfect.
Without the skill set to help these people. So what are my options? What are the options?
I have a very detailed answer for you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you.
I was a PERT deputy for several years, and I in contact with PERT, so I know the current protocols. But so if we get, typically if we go to a what we call a 5150 call, someone exhibiting, mental crisis, we know what we're going to typically, because typically the call taker will say, my son or my daughter's schizophrenic, or they're suicide. One of our common 5150 calls is someone's suicidal, right? So PERT is a great resource. PERT is a county-wide resource, so we have a lot of more PERT units on the streets than we used to when I was a deputy in the field. But sometimes they're not available. It could be an hour they're not working. It could be they're on another call. So if they're available, they do get sent any kind of 5150 related call. I think sometimes though, there's this, I think it's inaccurate where people think it has to be a PERT deputy, or PERT is a team. It's a PERT deputy and it's a mental health clinician. But every single deputy in the field and in the jail has the legal authority to place someone on a 72-hour 5150 hold, and they all go through the training and they'll know the criteria. So if there's not a PERT team available, every deputy that shows up certainly knows, how to properly assess that call. We also have another great option that just, I think, came out about maybe 3 years ago called MCRT, Mobile Crisis Response Team. And that's a really great option where, because you gotta understand, our first concern is there any threats, right? Is someone in danger? Was someone assaulted? But if someone calls and says, hey, my son or daughter's having an issue, they're not violent, they haven't committed a crime, we don't really want a deputy showing up because you just, it's scary, guns and stuff like that. And as long as, the dispatcher can confirm, that there is no other threats, then they will transfer that person to the mobile crisis response team, and they will send out a mental health clinician without a deputy. And obviously, they will call for assistance if something escalates after they get there. They also have the ability to call directly without going through a dispatch through the mobile crisis response team. But once again, they have to make sure there's no threats for their people or something like that. So it's a great option. But as far as, if we get a call, mental crisis call, and if someone has committed a crime, like a serious crime or an assault or something like that, I mean, our first duty is public safety. So, we can't just say someone assaulted somebody, tried to stab somebody, tried to hit somebody with a frying pan. We're not going to take them to the hospital because just because you place them on a 72-hour hold doesn't mean they're going to be there 72 hours. The doctor can release them right away if they think they're not currently, suffering. But then we have a huge, not only liability issue, a public safety issue, because if that person goes back and assaults or kills that person, that's not good. So if someone has committed a crime, we take them to jail. They do get assessed mentally at the jail. We have, it's a lot different than I was a young deputy, but we have full-time mental health at the jails, including psychiatrists, pretty much 24 hours a day. We have qualified mental health technicians, which are like mental health professionals, kind of like a PERT clinician. So they're there to, give any assistance that may be needed. And there's also the option if someone needs a lot more help, they can also be transported by the deputies to county mental health, and get assessed there. And then at what point they'll be taken back, to the jail. Like I said, we have psych units at the jail where people, we have psych nurses that specialize in treating these people in like our PSU unit. And so there's quite a few resources these days for people with mental illness. We would always prefer not to take someone to jail, believe it or not, if we can. And we love to have those cases where there's no crime and we can just either use MCRT or take someone, to the hospital. The deputy will 5150 someone where if there's no crime, and they'll release them to the hospital, and the hospital will give them help, and then the hospital releases them whenever they think they're well. But typically, that's when someone's, there's no crime, but they're a threat to themselves or a threat to others, gravely disabled, stuff like that. Did that answer your question?
I think the answer is if they're presenting a threat, there is not another place other than jail to secure them.
Correct.
Even if they are severely mentally disabled or mentally ill.
Correct. That obviously will be taken into account when they get to the jail to be housed, to get that extra care. But yeah, if there's a serious crime.
Other than the psychiatric unit.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how the system currently is, just for safety. That's how it's set up. But, like I said, people can always, they can, family can bail them out, or they can be released by the court, and down the road, once it's safe, a judge can say, hey, look, this person's not capable of committing a crime. So there's going to be no charges filed. You know, there's a lot of court processes too that tie in after the arrest. But like I said, the goal at the beginning is make sure people are safe.
Any other questions for Mr. Lewin? Yes, Dr. Brown.
When did these services that you're talking about now start? I mean, when were is this something recently that they've had such a evolution of the services that you're talking about? Are we just catching up with this? Has it been over the last 2 or 3 years that you've had a lot of this evolution in terms of
Which specific service are you talking about?
I mean, like
PERT or
more cognizant and more responsive to the psychological challenges out there.
Well,
Has it always been okay?
Yeah, I've been on the job now for going on 25 years, but I can tell you PERT has been around probably more than I know, but at least probably 15 to 20 years that I'm aware of. So PERT, I think San Diego County was one of the first PERT units in the nation. The MCRT, the alternative to PERT in a deputy, I believe that started in probably about 2 or 3 years ago. And as far as just the extra mental health staff in the jails, that's been a continual resource that's been added, over the years, and it's been that way for quite a while now with the full-time mental health staff.
When you say for a while, how many years?
I can't quote me on that. I don't know.
Okay. What about PERT? I know PERT they don't respond. I've been told that PERT don't respond until an officer is on the scene and make sure the scene is safe.
Thank you. That's a great point. I want to mention you get a lot of times where there's a controversial incident, use of force, someone's mental crisis, and they say, "Oh, if PERT were there, would have changed." Well, no, the PERT clinician is a civilian, and they do not come into play till it's safe. So if you have someone with a machete or something, I mean, they have to be the threat has to be neutralized, the de-escalated, and then PERT will come in once it's safe. Someone's restrained, they're no longer a threat. That's when PERT comes in. So, PERT are not negotiators. They don't interact with people when they're a threat, because it just a lot of bad things could happen. So yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was correct. Thank you.
There are no other questions. I'm sorry, Ms. Fasano.
I wanted to ask a question. Now, this may have already been referred to you, but in reviewing the various cases we have, some of them are a couple of years old or more. I had a question about at what point in each facility were body-worn cameras mandated?
We've started rolling out. I don't have the exact figures, but yeah, we've started rolling out the body-worn camera program. To my knowledge, probably 3 years ago. It was a slow rollout, but I think almost, and I can give you the exact, Brett, I'll get you the exact dates of which facility, but I think almost all our facilities have them now. They're a great resource.
Well, it'd be helpful to know that in the context of if they should have had them and they didn't use them, then obviously.
Yes, well,
That's an issue that CLERB is concerned about.
Yeah, any case where they are available, you will get the body-worn camera, but yeah, I will get those dates for you. They vary by each facility.
That would be helpful. Dr. Brown, and then that'll be our last question because we've got to get into closed session. We have a long one.
Yes, the ones that are issued the camera are mandated to wear it. Yes. Not everyone has been issued one, but most deputies have. But once you're issued it, you are to wear it.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our open session meetings. Ms. Gross, thank you very much, Mr. Lewin. Sorry, I'm trying to get us into closed session, so I apologize. If you could read us into closed session, Ellen.
Yes, thank you, Chair Pintar, members of the board, for item 12, closed session this evening under 12A, public employee discipline dismissal release pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, and we have 17 matters. And then item 12B is public employee performance evaluation, executive officer pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1. And that concludes my read-in.
That concludes our open session, and we will break for 5 minutes and move into closed session.